This is another one of the little jobs I've been meaning to do for a while, and we've got a little break in the weather, so I thought I'd get it done now. And that is to refill the Austin 7 radiator with clean water with some of this Fernox central heating stuff in there to stop it corroding. So I've just drained out the original antifreeze. I'm just kind of flushing the radiator through now. It's taken a few goes just to get the water coming out completely clean. I've done that and run the engine just to get the water circulating a little bit. I'm not sure that's really going to work with the water just draining through like that, but it can't hurt. And since it's looking pretty clean now, I'm going to refill it with the Fernox. I was talking today to someone who knows an awful lot more about Rileys than I do, and I asked them about the best way to machine the pistons, and they told me something that I hadn't noticed, which is a much better way to do it. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see. Probably can't really see, but apparently with Riley pistons, if you look at the back of the skirt, you can see there's a step machined into it, and apparently that step should be fairly accurate and the same across all the pistons. So in order to make a jig to hold them, I just need to make some sort of plate with a circular spigot on it that will fit into that ring in the back of the piston, and then I can make up a fake gudgeon pin that goes through the hole in the piston, drill through the center of that pin and thread it, and then I can basically use a bolt to go through the back of the plate with the spigot on it into that gudgeon pin and tighten it up, and that'll lock the piston into place. And that gives me a really secure way and repeatable way of holding the pistons so I can machine them. I need to get these out again so I can actually have a look at doing that. That'll make it fairly easy to hold it in the lathe. I still need to work out exactly how I'm going to hold it in the mill, but I should be able to use the same jig, the same setup to do that if I'm clever. It's another very cold, very wet day. Cold because it's a southerly wind, so Antarctic blast, and you can see there's actually snow on the top of the hills there. It's been quite a strange day. We've had periods of rain, then periods of sunshine with rainbows, and snow. It won't snow down here at this level. We're pretty much near the sea level, so it's far too low, but those hills are about 400 meters high, I think, and they said there would be snow down to 300 meters, so that looks about right. I've now successfully cut the 1/2 inch thread on the ends of these pins. At the moment I've left the shoulder on them a little bit long. You can see there's a bit of movement in there, because I want to put them on the car and see where the springs line up, and then if needed I can machine down the little shoulder on this end, or the other thing I could do is put a hardened washer in the other end if I need to. It always kind of worries me that on these there is actually no washer on these on the car. It just kind of goes up against the edge of the pin there. Apparently there's not a lot of room, so that's probably why. But the thread turning went okay. I've 3D printed a new set of gears. These are just printed in PLA because that did hold up pretty well, and it's much easier to print than nylon. But with these gears I actually printed them much more densely, so they're practically solid plastic, so I'm hoping they hold up a bit better. And where I had the problem on the other set, where the little notch in the middle there was wearing out, meaning that the gears would spin on the little collar, I realized for what I want to do, normally these gears are all separate, and obviously you want the drive to go from this one to this one, from this one to this one to this one to here. So these rotate as a pair. This one just has a spacer. So to avoid that problem happening again, I just printed these two gears as one combined. So even if the little notch there wears out, it won't matter, because this will just spin on its little collar that it rides on there, but they'll spin together, so it'll still transmit the drive through. The biggest thing I'm worried about now is teeth breaking off, but I think as long as I go very, very gently, I should be fine there. So the problem I've got is this is very hard steel, and I'm using high-speed steel cutters, and it's probably really hard to see, but I don't think it'll focus on it. The point of my cutter broke off. Luckily it was right at the end, and the thread was good enough that I could then clean it up with a die. But what I'm finding is I have to be really careful I don't break the points off the cutting tool, and the rest of it works pretty well. I have to go at the slowest possible speed because I need to manually advance the tool and then stop it in just the right place, because I can't disengage the half nut because I don't have a threading dial on this lathe. It's something I really need to sort out. So I have to leave this engaged the whole time, go in as far as I can, stop before it hits the shoulder, which that's one of the reasons I have to go at a really slow speed, so I can time it and do that. And then back the tool out, and then reverse the lathe, and then wind it in again. And what I'm finding is I can only go about 5 thou per pass on here to avoid loading anything up too much. But it definitely is working. You can see that's come out pretty well. So the thing is now, am I brave enough to do the 5/8 end, which is the same thread pitch, 5/8 by 16 TPI. And I'm wondering if I should risk doing that tonight or leave that for another night. Well, of course I went ahead and risked continuing. And it all went fine. So I've actually got it to the point where the nut just starts on the thread. I'm still waiting for the die to come from the UK, and then I can clean those up and they should be good. And I realized the thing that was probably breaking the point of my cutting tool wasn't the loading on it. I think what it was is hitting sort of the end there. I don't know what you would call that. So as I'm cutting, obviously I have to stop the lathe manually at a certain point, and what happens is you end up with a little chip left at the end of the thread. And I think what had happened was, after a couple of times I ended up with quite a step at the end of the thread, and if I wasn't quick enough stopping the lathe before it hit that, obviously the tool's going to run into that little, I don't know what you call it, nubbin or something, and want to come to a stop all of a sudden, and it's just going to ping the end off the cutting tool. I think that's basically what was happening. So these are now done, which is good. I want to get hold of some standard nuts. I suppose I could use castle nuts on these, but actually that's a good point. These would have been bolted through a chassis, and they had those castle nuts on them and have the little hole there. So I suspect these are similar to the forces on these must be fairly similar to the forces on the spring. Probably not as high, but there's quite a bit of leverage there. And if you imagine a shock absorber arm on the end of that, that's going to be bouncing up and down. So I'm just worried about being able to get this done up tight enough. But with a 5/8 nut there, I should be able to put a ton of torque on that. Not literally a ton, but a lot of torque on there and get that all nice and really, really tightly done up. So I'll probably just do it with a spring washer, and everything will be Loctited anyway. So I don't think it'll come undone. So the next thing is to figure out how to make these spacers. That's going to be interesting. The lathe gears seem to be holding up pretty well. It's just a bit nerve-wracking. It's hard to know how long these are going to last. So if anyone hears of a set of Emcomat 7 lathe change gears going for a good price, let me know, because I'd much prefer to have metal ones. But I think that's a good place to stop for the night, because it's getting really cold.